people of the internet, welcome back and happy Deaf Awareness Week. This week is Deaf Awareness Week, in case you didn't know. So in the spirit of that, this video is going to be a comprehensive guide to writing deaf characters. Because I'm currently at university. I've not got a lot of money because I'm trying to save up for getting another cochlear implant. And I like reading. So I've been reading a lot of rubbishy Wattpad books to see, just because it's free. And I've read a lot of ones with characters with hearing loss and whatever, just to see what they're put. And I noticed a few things that kind of kept cropping up of like inaccuracies. So I thought, if anyone wants to write a deaf character and they're not sure how to start, then hopefully this will be helpful for you. Also, this is kind of aimed at people who are going into it with good faith. If you're watching this video, you're probably not planning on writing a really horribly offensive portrayal of deaf people. You probably know better than that. So this is more like understandable things you might get wrong, rather than like, just writing Bond villains with Russian accents, sort of like just tastelessness that, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like this is legitimate stuff that you might not be able to understand. I've got a lot of notes because this is going to be quite a long video, so buckle up. Not that you're going to be going anywhere. I mean, you can leave at any time. So number one, and this is for writing deaf characters in fiction. All of this is about fiction, not about autobiographies or anything like that, or biographies, or anything non-fiction. So, number one, please just don't be scared to include diverse characters in your writing. I really appreciate any representation done in good faith. As long as you've tried to be respectful and you've done your best, I really appreciate it. Even if it's, there are a few inaccuracies, I really don't mind. So I'd much rather someone, do their best to include diverse characters, even if they don't get it exactly right, than just be like, oh, well, I don't want to risk upsetting someone, so I'm just going to make the entire cast straight, white, non-disabled men because don't want to risk doing anything that's out of that. Number two is to keep your character's level of hearing loss consistent and understand what your character can actually hear or would actually be able to hear with a specific level of hearing loss. I've read a lot of things where the kind of character's level of hearing loss just doesn't really make a huge amount of sense. It's like they won't be able to hear one thing that I think that they would be able to hear, and then they wouldn't be able to hear another thing that I feel like you would. A lot of things, the actual volume of them might not be what you think it is. So yeah, you just try your absolute best to understand what level of hearing loss your character has and what they can and cannot hear. Also remember that lip reading isn't that reliable. Like most deaf people aren't 100% accurate on lip reading. Like you really can't be. I think the best lip readers are like 50% accurate. Most I think is more like 30%. And yeah, so don't be like, oh, my character's completely deaf, they hear absolutely nothing, but they're just such a good lip reader that they understand everything. That's not really how it works. And also be aware that lip reading is limited by your eyesight. So if a character, you can't have someone lip read someone from like 100 meters away, like no one can see that far in that enough detail. And also and if, for example, the character needs glasses or something and they don't have their glasses on, and then don't expect them to be able to lip read because you need to be able to see quite well to read lips. Yeah. Number 3 is don't over or underestimate what hearing aids and cochlear implants can actually do. I've read a lot of things where either hearing aids or cochlear implants are portrayed as like completely useless. Like they'll just be like, oh, you know, I can't use hearing aids because I'm too deaf, and that's it. They don't work for anyone. When normally if a character can hear something without hearing aids will help them. So to me it doesn't make a lot of sense when it's like, oh, the character can hear something and they say that they do not benefit at all from any kind of hearing aid. I find that a bit odd. Also, cochlear implants I think can kind of be a bit either presented as an absolute miracle or completely demonized. You know, people who have cochlear implants can often hear pretty well with their processors on. I can hear pretty well with mine. Of course, it's always a personal choice if people get cochlear implants. It's absolutely fine to include a character who's deaf in a modern setting who doesn't have a cochlear implant by their own choice. That's completely fine. Or someone that has a specific kind of hearing loss, which means they can't get a cochlear implant or hearing aids. That's absolutely fine. But just don't discount them as being entirely useless. Because sometimes they're not, but also don't treat them as a miracle. I often see a lot of things where people who are totally deaf without their hearing aids on, and they put on hearing aids and they can hear perfectly, or you never see them struggle to hear anything ever. They hear people through doors, they hear people from a long way away, they hear people in a lot of background noise. That's not really how it works. Maybe if someone has like a mild hearing loss and they put hearing aids on, they can hear really well. But if someone's very deaf and they put hearing aids on, they're not going to be able to hear everything. Same with cochlear implants. Cochlear implants are more of like an on and off switch. Like how well a cochlear implant works for you is not connected to how bad your hearing actually is without it. So most people with cochlear implants are pretty much completely deaf, like I am. But they can still hear quite well because it is kind of artificial hearing. But I don't hear completely perfectly. I've got about, I'd say it's safe to be like, if there's no background noise, I'd say 2 meter range is the comfortable range where someone with hearing aids or cochlear implants can hear the person. If it's background noise, they're going to struggle more. Yeah. Try and work it out, and yeah, don't try and be overly political with hearing aids and cochlear implants. You know, don't portray anything as like a miracle or it's completely useless, because there's a reason people have them and there's a reason people might choose not to have them, you know? Number 4, this one I see a lot, and it's kind of sad to admit it because it's obviously so well intentioned and is so nice and would be so nice if this was the reality. But I see a lot of times where one family member is deaf or hard of hearing and their whole family and all their friends who are hearing learn sign language. That's really usually not the case. I'm sure there are some people who are incredibly lucky and they have a family that all learn sign language for them and all of their friends learn sign language for them. I don't know anyone where that's the case, especially a lot of the times when I see this kind of trope is the deaf person or hard of hearing person has very good oral communication, like they speak very well, they can understand a lot, they read lips, and their whole family has learned sign language for them, and all their friends, like their whole school class and their teachers and everything, have learned sign language for them. Yeah, unfortunately, as sad as it is, that's usually not the case. So yeah, it's not you, of course, if you want to show a situation like this, I'm not against showing like kind people that want to go over and above for a deaf friend or family member. Like, of course, that's lovely, but yeah, just don't treat it as like, oh well, of course they would. Why wouldn't they? Because it is pretty uncommon. Just be aware that it's uncommon if you're going to include it. Number 5 is remember that people take off their hearing devices and that they can't hear either at all or very well without them. I've seen a lot of things where, for example, someone's woken up in the night or something and someone's trying to talk to them and it doesn't explain them putting their hearing aids on or putting their cochlear implant processor on, and they can like hear the person, and it's like, I'm assuming it's dark, so they can't really be lip reading. It's one of those things where it's like, just be aware of the logistics. Yeah, people take off their hearing aids or cochlear implants to sleep, to shower, to, I don't know, just chill. Sometimes if you're just chilling at home, you might just take them off because you don't fancy having them on at that point in time. So yeah, people do that. Yeah, and also remember, like, if someone wakes up in the night and someone wants to talk to them, normally I would imagine most people wouldn't, if they have a hearing aid and a cochlear implant or 2 cochlear implants or 2 hearing aids or something, they'll only put 1 on normally if it's just for someone saying something quick. They'll normally just put whatever's their better ear on and just do that. So yeah, it's absolutely fine to have someone put 1 on to hear someone. That's also like a legitimate thing. Number 6, I see this a lot as well, is remember that hearing loss is unpredictable. If someone's got a progressive hearing loss, they normally don't know exactly how quickly they're going to lose all their hearing. So I've seen a lot of things where it's like someone goes to the audiologist and it's like, oh, you're going to be deaf in 2 years, and you know, then you're going to be deaf in 2 years. We know it's going to be 2 years. That's normally not a thing. Normally it will be, we'll monitor it and see how, we'll keep monitoring you and see what's happening, rather than like we know when it's going to happen. Yeah, and people can have really sudden drops in hearing. People can lose their hearing quite quickly and then it's stable out. People can lose their hearing progressively slowly. Sometimes people lose hearing and then recover some hearing. All sorts of things can happen. So if I were writing something, I wouldn't include like a specific date. Of course, if someone's diagnosed with a condition that they know causes progressive hearing loss, they can be aware of the fact that yes, their hearing is going to get worse over time. And yeah, of course that's the thing, but knowing like a date of like what your hearing is going to be like at a specific date in the future, I don't think that's really realistic, personally. Number 7 is to be respectful when describing deaf people's voices, and remember that not every deaf person sounds deaf. So for example, I don't really sound deaf. I am fully aware of that, because I lost my hearing when I was older, so I already knew how to speak. Some people that are born profoundly deaf will have, severely or profoundly deaf, will have more of like an obvious deaf accent. But not every person has that. And please, if you are describing a deaf person's voice, just try and not create a really unflattering, horrible description. Just don't compare people's voices to animals, or like just saying their voice is ugly, it's just not. Try and be nice. Yeah, and be aware that a lot of deaf people choose not to speak. Yeah. Unless you've got a separate problem like with your voice, it is physically possible for deaf people to speak, but a lot of times people either just don't learn to speak, or they choose to use sign language as their main language. And yeah, please don't come across judgy to what people choose to do with their speech or not speak. Yeah, number 8 is remember that deaf people don't know everything about deafness in general. Deaf people are experts on their own experience and nothing else. So for example, if someone's used hearing aids their whole life, they're going to be an expert on their particular hearing aids, but they might know absolutely nothing about cochlear implants. And if someone's had cochlear implants since they were like 2 or something, and they're now 30, they're going to know about cochlear implants and they might know nothing about hearing aids, but they've never actually used them. For example, I have used hearing aids and cochlear implants. So I've got 1 hearing aid and 1 cochlear implant, and I have awareness of both of those things. I have no clue really about bone anchored hearing aids, which is another thing. So if you notice on my channel, I don't really talk about that, even though there's a pretty common thing that some deaf people can use. It's not something that I can have, so it's not something I've ever really researched because it's not suitable for me, so I don't know anything about that. So if you really want to include like a really specific specific hearing device or a specific level of hearing loss, I would recommend just finding someone that has experience with that and writing it from that person's experience. Like, don't ask me what it's like having like a mild hearing loss, because I lost my hearing very, very quickly. So I never really experienced what it was like to have a mild hearing loss, or at least knowing that I had a mild hearing loss. I might have had a mild hearing loss before I lost most of my hearing, but I've never really experienced having a mild hearing loss and knowing that I had a mild hearing loss. So I can't really like tell you what that's like because it's just not my experience. So if you want to include someone with like a specific level of hearing or use a specific device, ask people like that. For example, I don't know what it's like to be a sign language only user who doesn't speak and doesn't use hearing devices and relies fully on sign language. I don't know what that's like because that's not me. I don't know what it's like to be at a deaf school because I had never been to a deaf school. You know, you've just kind of got to find people with an experience that's actually relevant to your character. Of course, leave a comment or whatever if you want to ask me about something, but be aware that I don't know everything about deafness. I know about my experience, I don't know about everyone's experience. Number 9 is remember that people's emotions are different around hearing loss. So please be careful about treating hearing loss as some tragedy. Some people, of course, like if you've had hearing and you've lost it, as is my experience, that's quite a difficult thing to go through. And obviously you're not going to be happy about it, at least at the beginning. I don't know, some people down the line may be very thankful for it, but you know, I'm not going to lie and be like, oh yeah, it's the best experience of my life, because it wasn't. But then some people are born deaf, they've never experienced anything different, they love it, they're like, oh, I'm part of a deaf community, I never feel like I'm missing out, and that's great. Like, yeah, so if someone's like that, please don't portray their experience as like a tragedy. And even if you were born deaf and you've grown up in like a hearing world, there are times where even if you don't hate being deaf itself, there are some things you might feel a bit left out or feel different, and that's just normal. Like, emotions can be complicated. Don't treat it overly as a tragedy, but don't be afraid of someone having a negative experience with the hearing loss. It doesn't have to be fully through a lens of like, being deaf is great, it's, you gain so much from being deaf. you can have a character that's sad about losing their hearing or sad about being deaf, but you know, you've got, just try and be a bit careful with it. Also, one thing I really don't like is have hearing loss treated as a curse. Like, oh, you've been cursed with hearing loss because you're a bad person, or because of something you've done, or, you know, and then once you become a better person, you can have your hearing back. Which, to me, or yeah, having someone just cured at the end and it treated like a miracle, I feel like can be a bit tacky. Same with using any sort of like disability or trait as a representation of someone's character or personality. It just seems very old-fashioned and like just not suitable for nowadays. I had to read something for one of my classes, and it was the 2 medical histories of Dr. Valmy. Las dos historias del Dr. Valmy is the name in Spanish, but I don't know what it's called in English. And there's like the grandmother who's hard of hearing, and that's supposed to be a representation of her not being willing to see, not being willing to listen to what's going on around her, sort of thing. Like, it's a representation of a character flaw, and it's like, well, to me that just seems like really lazy writing. It's like, don't have that. Being deaf isn't a character flaw, it's just a thing. You know, it's the same thing as like all the Bond villains having a Russian accent, because it's like, oh well, you know, Russia's evil according to 1980s Hollywood. Yeah, it just comes across a bit like Bond villain with a Russian accent sort of vibe. So yeah, I would stay away from that. And now this next section, I know this video is really long, bear with me. This next section is about how hearing aids and cochlear implants actually work. So these are some things that I see people get wrong a little bit in, you know, fiction, where people obviously, these are often some of the things where I'm like, yeah, the person who wrote this doesn't wear hearing aids. Like, there are some things where I'm like, yeah, I know you don't have hearing aids when I'm reading this. So hearing aids are most effective for people with a mild to severe hearing loss. Some people with a profound hearing loss do use hearing aids as well, but they won't be as effective. They are more commonly used than cochlear implants, and behind the ear hearing aids are the most common type, and that's what I have. So that's what I'm going to talk about, but be aware there are other styles. There are tons and tons of brands of hearing aids. You know, I would recommend just finding a specific model of hearing aids online, looking at all the specs, and like being like, okay, that's what model or whatever my character has. So just have it in your mind, like, you know which one they've got. So I'm going to take this out of my ear now. Oh, first of all, before I take it out of my ear, because I'll turn it off once I take it out of my ear. Hearing aids produce usually a sound called feedback, or whistling, or people say it's like screaming. I've heard it described in one of these novels that I read as static. I wouldn't describe the sound of hearing aids as static. It's more like a whistling than like a radio static. Like, when I think of static, I'm thinking more like shh, whereas hearing aids are more. Can you hear that? That's the sound. That's the sound that hearing aids make, and that sound will normally be triggered either by, if hearing aids are not fitted that well, it can be triggered by someone chewing or talking, which like moves the ear mold around your ear. In hearing aids that are fitted well, it will normally be caused by something going near the person's head. So if someone hugs someone and, you know, there's someone's head goes next to your hearing aid, you will hear that. It can also be triggered if someone takes the hearing aid off and it's still turned on, you'll hear that. And the whistling can sometimes be heard by the person wearing the hearing aid and no one else. Sometimes it can be heard by the not the person who's wearing it, but the person who's near them, and the person who's wearing it can't hear it. And sometimes both can hear it. So just be aware. So parts of hearing aids, what you have is the ear mold, and it's usually custom made. So the audiologist will fill your ear with like a modelling compound and send it off and get an ear mold made. So that's specifically made for the person's ear usually. Other styles of hearing aids might not need a custom ear mold. They might use a generic one. That's also a thing. This clear tube is just called a tube, and that's where the sound kind of gets passed down into your ear. And oh yeah, the way hearing aids work is they make stuff louder. It's a high-tech version of shouting really loud in someone's ear, basically. That's what they do. And the tube can be replaced. They kind of get stiff over time, so, and kind of go a bit discoloured, so people normally replace them like once every 6 months is recommended. But I've seen some people with like proper grimy tubes that just like have left them there for 3 years or something, and they'll just be super grim. But people do that. You're supposed to replace them like every 6 months, and you can do it at home, or sometimes people go to an audiologist and have them do it. I do mine at home because anything to avoid speaking to people. But some people, you know, like the high class treatment and want it to be done by an audiologist. The ear hook, this clear bit that you can see right here. So the tube goes from where these fingers are to through the ear mold. So the tube goes through, and the ear mold can be taken off the tube. Like I can take it off and then put back on. And the ear hook is this bit here, and that you normally don't need to replace it, but it can be replaced if it gets broken. And this bit is the main kind of body of the hearing aid. There are microphones on the top here, so that's where the sound is picked up. This is the program button. These are volume up and down buttons, and this is the battery door. So when this is closed, it will switch on, and it doesn't switch on immediately. It kind of plays a tone and then it turns on. So just be aware of that. The battery is in here, and you take it out like that. So it just comes out, and that normally needs to be replaced every few days, or up to maybe like once a week. Sometimes they last a full week. You know, they come in different sizes as well. I have the biggest size because I have quite bad hearing loss. Most hearing aids don't have batteries this big. A lot of batteries will be like half the size of this. Also, I have this little thing on the end. Let me get it off. This is a receiver for a radio aid, which is essentially like an external microphone that can go on like a teacher, so I can hear from further away. And these 3 little holes are for direct audio input, which means I can run a cable into that to listen to sounds from like a headphone jack. So yeah, if you want to have a character like listen to music through hearing aids, you can have them plug in a direct audio input cable into the bottom of their hearing aids and then plug that into a computer. You can also get Bluetooth hearing aids. These have Bluetooth, so I can actually listen to stuff directly through my phone from this. Yeah, that you can. This also has a telecoil. So the way hearing loops work. So in Britain, if you go into like supermarkets or like various public spaces, you'll see a blue sign with like a picture of an ear with a line through it, and then the letter T, and that means it's got a hearing loop fitted, and that means the person can put a setting on their hearing aids where it will link their hearing aids directly to a microphone behind like a counter in a shop or a post office, or it will link them to like the priest at a church or something. Yeah, so that's what a telecoil is. Hearing aids are not waterproof usually. I think there might be a couple of ones that are waterproof. Hearing aids are not usually waterproof, so if someone's going to be going swimming or something, they'll have to take their hearing aids off. Yeah. and the batteries for hearing aids. Let me show you how you buy the batteries. I'm just giving you all the information because you might want to write something specific and need this. So they come in packs like this. This bit spins, and then you turn around the back, and there's a little flap, and you pull that back, and then the battery comes out, and then you can use the battery. And I don't want to activate a new battery. So what I've done is I've put the sticker back on an old battery. So you get your battery out the packet, like I just showed you, and then they come with a little sticker on, and you have to peel this off to get them to start working. So they've got little holes, and yeah, can you see those like 4 tiny like dots on it? Those are air holes because they're zinc air batteries. They need the air to work. So you take the sticker off, and then the battery's activated, then you put it in your hearing aid, and then it starts working. And I think I've covered everything with hearing aids. If you have any more questions about hearing aids, how to write it, add it in the description. I read all my comments. So if you want to write something like, I've got a character and they're going to the swimming pool and they've got hearing aids, and just write like exactly what the scenario is and how that would work. I don't mind if you want to, no pressure. Cochlear implants, on the other hand, so that's what I've got on this side. I'll show it to you on my head so you can get a picture of how it looks. So cochlear implants are used for severe or profound hearing loss. So for people where hearing aids don't really work that well, because hearing aids just make sounds louder. So if you don't have enough hearing that if the sound is really loud, you still can't hear it, cochlear implants are an option for you. They require a surgery. So the surgeon goes in behind your ear and puts a thing under your scalp, like a receiver under your scalp, and then a wire that goes through your cochlea and connects to the hearing nerve. So it stimulates the nerve, and then you wear your external processor, which picks up the sound and sends it into your brain, basically. And it's a completely artificial sense of hearing. So it doesn't rely on you having any natural hearing at all. It's completely artificial. The style that I have, where it's like the bit behind your ear and then the wire going up and the thing stuck on my head, is the most common style. You can also get styles where they're a bit newer, where you have, this is a new model as well, but like this whole style is newer, where the whole thing is on your head. So you have like this bit here, but you have one of those, but it's a bit bigger and there's no wire and you don't have this bit on your ear. The whole thing's contained in like one unit that sticks onto your head. So I'm going to take this off. My voice might change because I won't be able to hear my own voice when I take this off, so just be aware. You'll still understand me. Yeah. So what you have here is the ear hook, and that's the bit that hooks over your ear. My brand, I can just pull it off like that. Some you need like a screwdriver or something to take that off. These two bits are the microphones which pick up the sound. So when I have this on, I don't hear from my actual like ear hole. I hear from the microphones on the top. I read in one thing that I read, someone had a cochlear implant and they put in-ear earphones in to like listen to music. That doesn't work with a cochlear implant. You won't be able to hear it because you hear from the microphones on the top, not from your actual ear hole. This bit here is the actual main processor. This wire can be taken off. So you need to pull it quite hard. And that's the coil. This is all one piece. The whole wire can be taken off, and then this bit's another separate bit. My one, the whole thing's one piece. And let me put that back on. And this bit here at the bottom, this is the battery. This can be taken off and charged separately. And I've got a charger for that. It just twists on to the charger and charges. This bit is a receiver for my radio aid, and it all goes together like this. These microphone covers, so this white bit at the top here, not the coil, not this bit. So once taking it off again. So I take off the coil, and then once every 3 months, I need to replace this bit here. I get different models of cochlear implant will probably have that be a bit different. Mine, it works like that. Then the coil goes on, and then the battery goes on, and then it works. Let me put this back on so I can hear myself. Okay, I'm on air. And the battery on hearing aids, battery on cochlear implants doesn't normally last as long as the battery on hearing aids. So I'll normally get about 16 hours out of one of these batteries. So I need to recharge it like overnight, every night. It connects magnetically. So this coil, it's stuck to my head by a magnet. I have a magnet in my head. So you don't see anything through my skin. You can feel the implant under my skin, but you can't see anything. And yeah, so I saw something, they used the word clip to, they were like, oh, he put his cochlear implant on and clipped it onto his head. And I'm like, what a weird word. Like, I wouldn't use the word clip. It just sticks like a magnet. And yes, it does stick to like anything magnetic. So if you want it to be really like as an inside thing, if you have someone stick their cochlear implant to the fridge or like stick it to something magnetic, that shows that you know what you're talking about. I mean, you don't have to include that. Let me see if this sticks to the water bottle. No, this is aluminium, so it doesn't stick. Where's something magnetic I can stick it to? This little pot of Vaseline, it sticks. So yeah, it's just a normal magnet. Magnets can stick to my head as well, like normal fridge magnets and stuff can stick to my head. That is a thing. Okay, back on. Waterproof cases are available for cochlear implants, so someone can go swimming and put their cochlear implant into its waterproof case and then go swimming. And they're basically just like a plastic bag, essentially. Different brands have like different ways of doing it. Cochlear, which is the brand that I have, which is a really confusing name because there's different brands of cochlear implants. One is called Cochlear. So I have a Cochlear brand cochlear implant. And there's also Medel and Advanced Bionics are the main brands. So the Cochlear's solution is called Aqua Plus. So you'd basically, I'm not going to do it because it's a bit of a faff to get it in. This, you put your processor in, you take off the coil. So I'd take off the wire like I showed you earlier, take that off. And then I take the wire off the top. Basically, the wire comes off this case as well. Like, you'd pull that off. It's quite hard to do. Everything's like child-proof, which makes them like clumsy adult-proof as well, which is kind of annoying. And then you put your processor in, and then you like seal it up, and it's got like a seal, so it all stays in there. And then you just, stick it onto your head like normal. And then you can go swimming and it's waterproof and it's all good. And then you'd put like a clip on it to clip it to your swimming costume or whatever, so you don't lose it. Because they're very expensive if you replace it, and I would be so embarrassed if I broke mine or lost it. That's how you'd go swimming with a cochlear implant. And cochlear implants don't do the feedback thing. So hearing aids, like if you go next to your head and someone hugs you or something, you get that sound. Cochlear implants don't do that. Like you can't hear that whistling sound. Hopefully that answers any questions that someone might have if they're thinking about writing a book or something with a deaf character in. I hope you enjoyed it. I know this video has been very long, but thank you for watching. Bye.